Hey Flight Test family, my name is John. I live here in Northwest Ohio and I'm entering in my contest application for the STEM powered Flugtag inspired airplane. This is a flying wing that was inspired kind of by Jack Northrop and the Horton brothers and Blom and Voss during the 30s and 40s, and you see in movies like The Avengers, just different comic book heroes. There's one in Captain America. So kind of inspired by that and did the little Red Baron paint scheme here. But I'll show you the build video and some flying videos. I wanted to make sure it checked the boxes. It's a slow flyer, can fly fast, fairly maneuverable. This was the second iteration, and you'll see in the build videos how quick and easy this goes together. And you'll see in the flying videos how well it flies. And this could be a viable application in Flugtag. If you took this, and since it's a single wing, you could get on the top of it and modify it as inspired by kind of the contest ideas, I believe. So that's it. Just wanted to put this up on YouTube. I'll put the files for the Lightburn files and the DXF files in a Dropbox folder, and I'll put the link in the description. So check it out and let me know what you think. Thanks. So I have the design set up in Lightburn, and I'm going to cut out the foam board on my X-Tool laser, which I know not everybody's going to have. This is a 40-watt laser, and if you do the foam board in black, the 40-watt diode laser will cut this foam board with no problem, and I'll take some video of that once the plane starts cutting on the board. So I have everything set up on my laser, ready to cut. I'm going to go ahead and hit the start button. It's going to take about 8 minutes. I won't video the whole thing, but I'll shoot enough of it to show the cutting sequence. Alright, so we're out of the etching phase. Some of the lines in the foam are just etched in for reference. Right now it's starting to move into cuts that are scoring level deep. They're not all the way through. There's your CG references that it just put in. That's a fold line. Now it's actually starting to cut parts. And so the total project time on this is under 9 minutes. And I'll show you all the parts once the laser's finished. So all the parts have been cut out on the laser, and they're all labeled. There's F2, F1, F3. I also have some angle guides here. So you can see wing edge, fin edge. That's the wing to fin guide. I did different guides for the different components. The dihedral guide. So I'll walk you through the assembly steps. There's not a lot of pieces. It's really just important to get the steps in the right order, but we'll take you through that. So the first step that we're going to do is put the dihedral, or the bend in the wing, before we put the fuselage together. So that'll be our very first step. And since I'm using black foam on my diode laser, I went ahead and colored in the center of gravity marks that are etched into the wing. But that's your balance point right there. So that lets you know you're looking at the bottom of the wing. All the cuts and score lines that are in the wing, including these two reference lines for making sure you get it centered, are the bottom. So that's the way to tell if you're looking at the top or bottom of the wing. So we're going to turn the wing over. I also have the dihedral guide, so this is the other piece you're going to need for this step. But we'll turn the wing over. We're going to mark a center line from the point to the trailing edge point, and we're going to score that line, not cut, but score that line to put the dehedral in. So I'll do that step and I'll come back. So I've got the line cut. The next thing I'm going to do is take a small screwdriver, or you can use a bamboo skewer, and just put a slight impression in the foam here. The wing angle is not that steep. It's about 5 degrees, maybe 6 degrees, I can't remember. But basically you're going to run a bead of hot glue after you put this score line in and set the dehedral. And since I'm doing this with my phone and hand holding it, I won't show you the exact step, but if you've built flight test planes before, you know the technique. So basically it's going to give me a little relief here so I can put the bend in. I'll put the glue in and I'll come back once the glue's drying for the dehedral in the wing. So you can see I've got the wing on the table with the dehedral guide and the bead of glue. So I'm holding the left wing, or left side of the wing, flat with my 1, 2, 3 block. I've got the dehedral angle set and I'm letting the glue dry. The next step is pretty straightforward. You have a right side, a left side, and a center section. Right side is F2, center section's F3 and F1. Doesn't really matter, just to know that you have a left, a right, and a center. Center's got the lightning holes cut into it. And I did adjust these slots for the wing. So this is the wing slot. This is a hole for the motor cable to pass through. This is your battery slot. But the wing slot on the outer pieces of the fuselage are offset slightly and a little larger than the center slot, and that's to account for the dehedral angle. So you should be able to get the wing in there with no problem, and I'll show you a couple prep steps. But the next step in the actual process is to glue all 3 sides together. Again, nothing complicated here, just some hot glue around it, sandwich it together, let it dry. I'll come back once the fuselage is glued together. All right, with the fuselage glued together, I did have to do just a slight bit of trimming in that center section to get the wing in there nice and easy. But before I glue it in, I'm going to do a few pieces of prep work. The elevons need a little bit of washout, and I've cut the slots for that, and I'll show you what that looks like when we get to that step. I'm going to go ahead and slot the angle here and bevel for the elevon, and I'll do that on the build table. It's just easier when it's laying flat. But you'll notice there is an engraved line on each side of the center line of the wing, and that's to make sure that it's lined up perfectly centered within the fuselage. So I'm going to go ahead and take the wing out and do a couple of these steps and then put it back in. We'll glue it and then we'll finish up the build. Okay, before I slide the wing back in and start gluing things, I went ahead and scored the line here. I have this tool that I got from Harbor Freight that is a great tool because I use this end to pick out any foam, and then I use this edge, it's a blunt tool, to score the foam. I did score lines with the laser here, and I did a cut line here and here. These are going to be set very critically for the proper flying qualities, and I'll show you that when it's finished. And I'm going to go ahead and bevel this edge at a 45-degree angle because this stabilizer or elevon, whatever, is going to need to be set at an angle. And you need to do this step now, or it's a lot easier to do it now before you slide the wing in the fuselage, but you can't glue anything yet, otherwise the wing won't fit inside the fuselage. So in the build steps, it's follow along with the video, but I go ahead and score this line and I'll get this ready for setting once it's in the actual fuselage. All right, so I've got that bevel in on a 45-degree angle, and it's important to see that you're doing this on the bottom of the wing, and that's the side the score line is on the foam board. So it's going to fold at that position, and it's ultimately going to end up in the down angle, but we'll show that in a few minutes. But just know you're making that bevel on the outer edge of the bottom of the wing. That's the critical part. Okay, I've recentered the wing back inside the fuselage. You'll notice the alignment line is perfectly lined up with the fuselage there. That's super critical. And we're almost done. The next steps are going to be to glue the fins in, which are sitting over there, and setting those at the proper angle, and then putting the down angle on the elevons out here on the end, and then setting the washout. So that's going to be the next steps. I'll go ahead and do those steps and then come back and show you the finished result, and critically noting where to align the up position on the washout that we're going to put into the wingtips. So here I'm using the wing to fin guide, and I have it set up on the wing, and you just want to move that angle till it's flush. And you'll note on the guide there's a wing side and a fin side. That sets the proper angle of the fin. We'll do this on both sides, but I wanted to get a shot of that so you could see it. Once the fin is dried, the next thing will be to set the stabilizer angle. And again, there's a guide for this. You're going to want to run a bead of glue in that bevel edge that you put in, and make sure you glue it at that angle, and you'll be all set. I'll come back and do that, and then we'll set the washout. All right, we're looking at the bottom of the airplane, and these are now set at the proper angle. And if you look at it from the back, and again, it's upside down right now, those go down, and I'm looking at the bottom and the fins. The other thing we got to do is glue the wing, and I haven't done that yet. That'll be next after we set the proper washout. And this is probably, to get good flying qualities, the most critical step. What we're going to do is take this tab and set it where the bottom sits right on the top edge there. That's the proper angle. If you do this on both sides, you'll be fine. I'm going to run a bead of hot glue in that gap right here. And then I'm going to put a bead along this edge just to hold it. But that is an extremely critical step. You'll do that on both sides. And again, how do you know you have the right amount? You want this edge, which is the bottom edge, to line up just flush with the top edge, right like that. So we'll glue that. I'll do one more picture of that. I'll glue in the wing, and the next step is electronics. All right, that is the proper washout amount right there. And again, you could see the bottom edge to the top edge. And then I went in and put some hot glue all the way around on the bottom side. And then you can put a little bead of reinforcing glue along the fin if you want to. Again, the next final step here is glue the wing in and start the electronics installation. But that's the proper amount of washout. Make sure you do it equally on both sides. Otherwise, you'll introduce a slight rolling moment, which you don't want. And then, when you glue the wing, you just want to make sure that it's even, that you have it the right amount of dehedral consistent on both sides. I'm going to use Foam Safe CA and Kicker for that step, because I find that I can make sure that it glues right where I want it. And then I'll put a bead of hot glue down along the fuselage side. I've already built one of these to fly it, so this was just one for instructional purposes. I'll show you the electronics installation next. All right, so here are the electronics installed. Now, this is the one that I've flown already, so it's got gray primer on it because I'm going to paint it. But you'll notice a couple things. I'm using the STEM Power Pack, obviously. Red on the left, blue on the right. As far as the motor install, you can see the washout that I have here. And the flying video, this is exactly the configuration. On the fuselage, I have a score area where I mount the control board and gyro, and then I just use a tab of hot glue on each motor. And then the slot for the battery, this is exactly how I configured it for flight. If you put the battery toward the rear of the slot and use your CG marks, which you'll notice here, if it balances there, it'll fly. The other thing, you want to just make sure everything's straight. I put slots for the verticals for the fins, so you get those perfectly aligned and should be all set. But that's the configuration, and that's the build. Pretty fun. It flies great, as you can see from the videos, and thanks for the consideration for building it. It's pretty fun. I'll put the plans, the Lightburn files, the PDF, everything in a Dropbox, and I'll have the links in the description for the video.
Look at that bird. Oh. don't land on a roof somewhere. Can't really see it.